The Civil War, there were 9 million people that lived in the South. 9 million people that lived in the Confederate States. Inside the 9 million, there were 3.9 million slaves. 3.9 million slaves. How many people owned at least one slave? Who were the slave owners? At least one slave. Guess what? 5%. You see, to me, this is shocking information. You're talking about a guy who's growing up in America, a liberal, black liberal Democrat, who goes to do this research and sees, what, 5%? I thought everybody in the South had slaves. I thought you could just go down to the corner market, buy yourself a slave, and walk off. That's what you think. 5%. 5%. Okay. Who were your governors, senators, congressmen, newspapermen? Who were the ones that controlled the knowledge base? Democrats. Who were the big-time magnet slave owners that owned 100 slaves or more?
Agriculture, right?
Less than 1%. Less than 1%. Approximately 1,800 people controlled Southern society. They controlled what people understood to be the truth. They controlled the language, the knowledge base, the newspapers. Joe, I'm going to use you as an example if they don't mind. We're going to go through 2 quick scenarios. Joe has volunteered. Thank you, Joe. Joe here is a yeoman farmer. He's got his piece of land. He's got 2 boys working on his land. He's got a wife who's pregnant. Bear with me. And he is what you consider your quintessential redneck. Why? Because he's out working on the fields. He's working with his 2 hands. And that's why he's called a redneck. Because he's actually doing work. I am a slave owner. I've got about 200 slaves. I don't do my own work. I have my slaves do my work for me. And I come to Joe and I say, Joe, listen, I spent a lot of time up in Congress. And we got a good feeling that these Republicans are going to come into office. They are emancipationists. They are abolitionists. The first thing they want to do, we believe, is end this institution of slavery, to pass laws to abolish slavery. Now, I understand our relationship. You and I are in competition with each other. I understand that. I've got free labor. You've got your boys that work your land for you. I get it. But you got to understand that my slaves are worth up to $2,000 each. If they abolish slavery, I am wiped out. And as I said, I understand our relationship and we're in competition with each other. Now, we've gotten together, us slave owners, we've gotten together and we've decided that we're going to leave this union before he even gets elected. And I need to know that if bad things come about, if we end up having to go to war over this, that you will take your 2 boys and yourself and leave your pregnant wife and go fight this war so I can keep my slaves. Could you do that for me, Joe? What's his answer?
No.
No way.
It's not what they said.
Second scenario. Joe, I spent a lot of time up in Congress. And these Republicans, we've got a good feeling these Republicans are coming to office. What we found out is they want our land. They want our cotton. Because they can sell for 5 times more up in New York. We think that as soon as they get into office, they're going to pass all kinds of laws and all kinds of tariffs to make it more difficult for, and here's the worst thing about it. There's a possibility that they may even come down here and invade to take our lands. It'll be like a war of northern aggression. I don't know about you, but I am keeping my land. And I suspect that you would want to keep your land also. So if they start this war and try to come against us, first off, I think we should just leave. I don't even think we should deal with these guys because they're lunatics up there. But if they come down here, they will take my land. If they take my land, they'll take your land. And I'm ready to fight. Are you ready to fight next to me? Sure. Absolutely, yes. Are the Democrats not good at doing that?
They're actually too good. We're not in a war, remember?
With the help of the media. You ever remember
The reason I get upset about it, the reason I talk about this so much, the reason it inflames me so much, is because in that war, 640,000 Americans died. I don't care. North and South, 640,000 Americans died. At the expense of 1,800 people who wanted to expand slavery and expand their wealth into the West.
Oh, wow.
That's what we don't hear.
And you never, ever hear that. It's all about control, ladies and gentlemen. It has always been about control. And I think that most of America has never heard of Charles Sumner. And I think that's a tragedy. Why? Because we study black history and not freedom history. Do you understand it?
Yeah.
We must be studying freedom history to bring people together. The vote count for this civil rights law in 1875, one Republican voted against it, 99% Republican support. Democrats, 0%. So why did we need a Civil Rights Act in 1964? Because the Democrats repealed this in 1883. This is how the Democratic Party was described in 1875 in the New York Times. They said this: they are supported by the men who are interested in controlling Negro labor. Controlling Negro labor. And the ignorant whites who hate the nigger, and their continued success will be disastrous to the cause of freedom and the education in this section. They undoubtedly have a comprehensive plan of secret organization, and they are gaining power, hoping to control the nation in 1876. They seek to gain by the ballot what they lost by the bullet. Those are profound statements, ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah, they are.
and sound very familiar.
Yeah.
This was so profound in 1880 that I put it on the front of my book. I put it on the front of my book when I found this quote from the New York Times, 1880. It says this: so long as slavery and the war linger within the memory of Americans, the youth of the Republic will continue to grow up Republicans. And war, and slavery and the war will be remembered as long as the public school system exists. The public schools have slain the Democratic Party with the textbooks. You see, back in 1880, when our kids were going to school, on one side they would say Abraham Lincoln, Republican Party, freed the slaves, they were for freedom. On the other side, they would say Democratic Party were pro-slavery, they wanted to enslave black people. So kids would go to school, they would say, I'd rather be a Republican. If you are a Democratic Party leader and you get into power, what might be the first thing you'd want to do to the textbooks?
Yeah, lose it.
Has anybody ever heard any of this information?
I guess they were pretty good at it.
They were pretty good at it. Woodrow Wilson. Our first real progressive president, I call him, and I put him in my book also. The first movie ever shown in the White House was shown to Woodrow Wilson. That movie was Birth of a Nation. The Klansman epic. It described black people as monkeys, as the Nazis described Jews as rats. And when the movie was over, he gave this glowing review. He said it was a lightning bolt of truth.
Wow.